Weather outside represents my mood today. It's raining. It's a gloomy day if you're an Auburn fan. Last night in Tuscaloosa, Auburn got beat 96-84 by Alabama. The final score was closer than the game really was. It's been a frustrating season. Last night was a frustrating night. I said last week on the show, for all intents and purposes, this season was over. That assessment held true this week. Auburn had a chance to change that by getting a big win over Alabama. They didn't do it. We're going to talk all about last night. We're going to talk about this program, the future of this program yet again on today's episode. Go through last night, kind of the takeaways that we have. Thank you for listening or watching. If you're listening to the show podcast, you're watching it on YouTube, social media, wherever you are, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so, so much. This is not going to be the most uplifting or exciting episode to listen to if you are an Auburn fan. Now, if you're an Alabama fan and you happen to be watching or listening to this, you'll probably enjoy it a little bit more than Auburn fans, because this isn't going to be a very happy show. We got to talk about some hard truths yet again and talk about this program and this team as a whole. So let's dive into last night. Let's talk about last night. Let's talk about the immediate, and then we'll move on into the long-term future. Starting with last night, as I mentioned, Auburn lost this game 96-84. Again, the final score was closer than this game really was. Alabama dominated this game from start to finish. If you had told me that Auburn was trying to play poorly, I would have believed you. The start of this game was so bad. Auburn had multiple turnovers. Defensively, they're all out of whack. Obviously, stopping Alabama's offense is not an easy task. I get that. I understand that. But Auburn's defense was getting confused on screens, just basic stuff that Auburn was messing up in this game. And then offensively, they're just out of rhythm, out of sorts. And as Stephen Pearl said after the game, Alabama beat Auburn at its own game here. Was a more physical team, really punked Auburn and got after this team. It was an embarrassing performance against your rival, with your season hanging in the balance, to come out and play with that type of effort and with that level of execution. It's not surprising at this point, because again, we've seen this now from this team pretty consistently this season. We've seen a lack of effort that is needed to compete and play at a high level, but it's still just so frustrating. How do you go out there against your arch rival with your season on the line and play the way you did, to play essentially lackadaisical at times? And I just don't get it. I really don't get it. I was never a collegiate athlete, but just as someone who played sports his whole life and played sports through high school, I just don't understand how you play that way, knowing what is on the line for you, knowing that, hey, for some of these guys, this is going to be their last chance to play in the NCAA tournament, or their last collegiate games, or their last time wearing that Auburn uniform. I just don't get it. It was an embarrassing performance, pathetic performance, I would even say. There was a better second half. I mean, if you want to pick out some positives, offensively, Auburn was a lot better in the second half. But you can't dig a massive hole against a team as good as Alabama and expect to come back against an offensive team as good as Alabama is and expect to come back in that one. And Auburn didn't. Really want to spend too much time on the game, if I'm being honest with you. I yet again want to talk about what's next for this program, for this team. So starting off with this team and what's next, so Auburn, the season isn't over, unfortunately for some, if you're ready to be done watching this team. This season is not over. The SEC tournament starts this week. It starts on Wednesday. For the first time in a while, Auburn will be playing on the first day of the SEC tournament. Auburn, I believe, is the 12th seed. They'll play Mississippi State in the first round of the SEC tournament on Wednesday afternoon. Of course, Auburn had that atrocious game against Mississippi State earlier in the season where Josh Hubbard just went absolutely bonkers, and Auburn lost that game in Starkville. So Auburn will play that Mississippi State team on Wednesday afternoon. And because pretty much every single bubble team lost on Saturday, including Auburn, Auburn's NCAA tournament hopes are somehow not completely gone. Now, if you ask me my personal opinion, do I think Auburn's going to make the NCAA tournament? I do not. But there is still hope, somehow, some way, for Auburn to make the NCAA tournament. I do not believe the SEC tournament matters very much, if at all, for NCAA tournament purposes. It just, year in and year out, these conference tournaments get hyped up by the networks like ESPN and how it matters so much. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all, but time and time again, I think back to previous years with how it's affected Auburn. I think back to when Auburn won the SEC tournament 3 years ago, and it didn't move Auburn's seed line. I think that 2019 Auburn wins the SEC tournament. It didn't affect Auburn's seed line. If you look at Texas A&M a few years ago, they were outside the NCAA tournament. They make it all the way to the SEC tournament championship game. They still don't make it in. So I really don't think it has that big of an impact, but certainly you could at least maybe help yourself by winning a few games here if you're Auburn to give yourself an outside shot maybe of still getting an at-large bid. Again, I find it unlikely. I do not think Auburn is going to make it, but I'm not a bracketologist, so I let them speak for it, and they say Auburn still has a shot here. So I'll say Auburn still has a shot, but probably going to need to win a couple games here. It starts with Mississippi State on Wednesday. If Auburn wins that one, they would face Tennessee on Thursday. Auburn lost to Tennessee in Knoxville earlier in the year in what was not an atrocious game from Auburn. Auburn played that one pretty well defensively, just struggled offensively against, of course, a really good Tennessee defensive team. So Auburn will play Tennessee on Thursday. If you somehow pull off that upset, then you get Vanderbilt on Friday. But again, I don't expect that at this point. That's the immediate future for this team. I am curious, what's their motivation going to be like? Are they still going to play like they believe they have a chance to make the NCAA tournament? Are they going to tap out? Again, the effort that they played with these last several weeks, including in the game against Alabama last night, doesn't lend me to believe that this Auburn team is going to play with just out of their mind effort and intensity that is going to be required to maybe win a couple games here. But maybe they'll surprise us. But again, I'm not really expecting it. I do not have high expectations for Auburn. Would not be surprised to see Auburn beat Mississippi State. But beyond that, I don't see Auburn making a run here. But that'll be on Stephen Pearl and the leadership of this team, or lack thereof, of this team try to be motivated and try to go and win a couple games in Nashville to keep your season alive. So let's move on now to long-term thoughts. We did this last week. We're going to do it again because I have more. Let me pull up what I tweeted out last night, because I had a long thread that I tweeted out, I think, around halftime of the game. Just I couldn't wait to get to the show today to go ahead and share some thoughts. So I want to go ahead and read that thread, and then I want to expand a little bit on it. So here's what I tweeted out last night. I said, quote, Bruce Pearl and Auburn changed SEC basketball. Auburn showed with the right coach and right investment that you could win at a high level at what was a historically bad program. Other programs followed suit. Fair or not, the standard for Auburn basketball is to compete for championships year in and year out. That didn't and shouldn't change because Bruce Pearl retired. Auburn fans understood the context of the situation this season, meaning the roster, but nonetheless, results should be better than this. This program is at a crossroads and has a decision to make. Is it going to invest at a high enough level to allow Auburn to continue to compete for championships? Is Stephen Pearl going to make the changes necessary to ensure this is the worst season he has as a head coach? To summarize, Auburn basketball changed SEC basketball. However, Auburn can quickly seep back into irrelevancy if it does not take the necessary steps to get back to the level this program is capable of. Suffice to say, I don't ever want to see a game like we've seen tonight ever again. So yeah, I fired off quite a few tweets last night. As many of you, I was emotional. I was frustrated. Look, this show, it started out as I was a student at Auburn. Now I've graduated and I'm an alum. I bleed orange and blue. Look, it hurts me. It pains me to see Auburn basketball play at this level. It ticks me off. It makes me so mad to see Auburn lose a game in that fashion to Alabama. So yeah, it means a lot to me, and it means a lot to a lot of Auburn fans and a lot of Auburn alums to see what has happened to this program this year. Again, Auburn fans are smart. They're not dumb. They understood the situation. They understood that, hey, you lost almost everyone from a Final Four team. They understood that Bruce Pearl retired right at the start of practice for this season. The expectations were not that high for this team, but they're still expected a better level of play overall this season from this team than we've gotten. I think Auburn fans, and myself included, expected Auburn to still be an NCAA tournament team, a team that can still compete with just about anybody in the country, because Auburn at times has shown that ability. Again, I know people are getting tired of hearing about the Florida and the St. John's wins, but it's true. It did happen, even if it was earlier in the season. So, despite all of that, Auburn fans have not gotten what they expected from this team this year, and so people are frustrated, including myself, and I think rightly so frustrated. As I mentioned, Bruce Pearl and Auburn changed SEC basketball. when Bruce Pearl came to Auburn, really in SEC basketball was the worst Power 6 conference in college basketball. It was Kentucky. You had Florida, again, with Billy Donovan, had a couple of good years there, and a couple of years after that. You had Tennessee here and there, because, again, with Bruce Pearl being at Tennessee, he helped some of that. But besides that, that was about it. Again, you may have a team pop in there here and now, but that was about it. Bruce Pearl got to Auburn, and he had another shot after getting fired at Tennessee. He got to Auburn. It took a few years. It wasn't the NIL and transfer portal era. It took a few years, but he got this program to a super high level and into one of the best programs in the SEC. He got Auburn to an SEC. Auburn won an SEC championship in 2018. Auburn goes on to win the SEC tournament championship in 2019 and makes the Final Four. And then in that moment, everyone realized, okay, if Auburn can do this, why can't we? And so people started these other programs, Alabama included, I know as much as they hate to admit it, was likely motivated by what they saw Auburn doing across the state, and they made a fantastic hire to their credit with hiring Nate Oates. And again, other programs as well decided, hey, we can invest and we can win at a high level if Auburn can do it. So now you have the SEC playing at an extremely high level and being one of the better conferences in college basketball. But now Auburn's at a crossroads. Bruce Pearl has retired. Stephen Pearl's taken the helm. You lost your entire team, essentially, from a year ago. That was a Final Four caliber team. And now Auburn's got a decision to make. Are you going to continue to invest and support this program? That way it can continue to play and sustain a high level, to continue to compete for championships like this program has in the past nearly decade at this point? That's the question that Auburn is faced with. And just to make a note here, I can already hear some of the counter arguments saying, well, are you excusing Stephen Pearl here? No, I'm not. He's got to be better as well. I'm not excusing him or making him immune from the criticism. No, he's got to be better as well. I included that in my thread. This, from all aspects of the Auburn program, Auburn has to decide, what's the investment going to be? What's the support going to be? What changes does the staff, or do you need to make it staff-wise? We know roster changes have to be made. This roster not near good enough this year. But despite all that, again, Stephen Pearl still has to be better as a coach, and his coaching staff still has to be better as well. The standard is the standard, though. Stephen Pearl said it when he got the job. That was one thing that is stuck in my mind from that I've thought about all season long. He said it. He understands it. He's been a part of all these championship teams that Auburn had under Bruce Pearl. He understands that Auburn expects to compete for championships in basketball year in and year out. Down seasons are going to happen. That's a part of it. But year in and year out, you should be competing at a high level and having a chance to win the SEC and having a chance to make deep runs in March. And that hasn't been the case this year. That's not going to be the case this year. So the question, again, Auburn faces now is, what are you going to do about it? What changes are you going to make? What investment are you going to put into this program to allow it to have a big bounce-back season next year, to get back to the level that Auburn fans expect? Because the performance this year, quite frankly, is unacceptable and inexcusable. My hope is that the performance and the level of play that we've seen from Auburn basketball this season, that we saw last night against Alabama, my hope is that motivates those involved. I know it motivates Stephen Pearl. I don't question that. I hope it motivates others around the program. I hope it motivates boosters around this program. Hope it motivates John Cohen and this athletic department to do whatever it takes to ensure that the product that we saw on the court and that we've seen on the court the majority of this season never happens again. That is my hope. My fear is the opposite happens. That apathy sets in, that we go, the Auburn athletic department goes, the boosters game. Well, that was fun with Bruce Pearl. That was cool and all, for a few years that we were good at basketball. But hey, we're a football school. We're just going to pack it in. We're not going to try to get back to a high level. I hope that does not happen. That is a big-time fear of mine. I still believe, with the right investment, with the right roster, with making some changes and making some adjustments, that Stephen Pearl and can still be successful as Auburn's head coach. I know some may not believe that, and that's fine. I know he hasn't given you a lot of reason to believe that this season. That's totally fair. That is still my thoughts on this program. But as for the roster as well, and just what Auburn needs to take pride in its roster moving forward, We'll talk more about roster changes in the coming weeks on this show as we get into the portal and whatnot. But man, the guys on this roster this year, in large part, again, there are some guys that are not. I'm not going to specifically point out anyone in either direction, but overall, guys on this team have not had enough pride in wearing the orange and blue. It's got to mean something to put on that Auburn basketball uniform night in and night out, understanding the shoes that you're in and understanding the legacy of the guys that came before you. There's got to be some pride about that. I saw the tweet last night from Wendell Green saying, clear the house or burn it down or something like that. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it. It pains me to see former guys that know the standard of Auburn basketball, former players like Wendell Green, who was a part of an SEC championship team. He knows the standard of this program, and it pains him to see the level of play and see the effort that you're getting from the players on this team. And it pains the fan base. So it really ticks me off. I mean, it really makes me think some of these guys don't deserve to wear that uniform. You're going to play with the effort and the intensity that we've seen from some of these guys on this team this year. If you're not willing to give your all, if you're not willing to lay it all out on the line for the name on the front of your jersey, then you don't deserve to wear it. And I don't think some of these guys understood that. I don't think they understood what this program was all about, what this program is all about, and what the guys that came before them did and won. I don't think they quite understood that. I don't think they played with that level of intensity and effort. So this offseason, if I'm Stephen Pearl, and again, he knows a lot more about the pulse of his program than I do. He's in there every single day. But I think you've got to have some tough conversations, and he'll decide who he wants to keep and who he doesn't. But I make it clear that the level of play that has occurred this season and the level of effort that has happened this season from a lot of players on this team is unacceptable. And if you're not willing to play at an entirely different level next season, then you might as well leave, because it's not going to be, you're going to be held to a higher standard than what we've seen this year from Auburn basketball. This team has failed dramatically to play to the standard of Auburn basketball, and it pains me to see that. It pains me to see the level of play we've seen from this program and from this team. Changes have to be made. Decisions have to be made. Again, I don't think it's too much to say that Auburn basketball is at a crossroads and had a decision to make. Again, I try not to, try to extrapolate this a little bit, because again, you're looking at is this going to be a trend, or is it just a down year? If this was Bruce Pearl, I think people would look at it and say, you know what? It was a down year. It happens. You lost a lot. It is what it is. Move on. Get ready for the next season. Because it is Stephen Pearl in his first year as a head coach, because Bruce just retired, we're taking a much bigger picture look at things and starting to question everything. I don't know that that's fair. I think it is, because again, Stephen Pearl doesn't get the same benefit of the doubt that Bruce did, because he's not a Hall of Fame head coach like Bruce Pearl is going to be. So I know there might be some pushback to say, hey, just toss this aside, toss this season out the window, and just say it was what it was. Let's not make it bigger than it is. But I don't think that you can do that, because of the circumstances and the context of the situation that Auburn basketball is in this season. That's all I've got to say right now. Again, the roster, I don't want to get too much more into it. The roster just wasn't good enough this year. We know that, but again, it doesn't excuse the level of effort and level of play. I believe the roster is capable of playing with certainly more effort, but also playing at a higher level than it has played this season. So it remains to be seen what happens with the rest of this year, because again, it's not quite over yet. Auburn still has the SEC tournament. That'll be coming up on starting on Wednesday, so we'll see. Maybe this team still finds a way to get to the NCAA tournament. As I said, I don't believe that will be the case. But we will break it all down, whatever happens this week, next week on Talkin' Tumors. We'll dive into it all and continue to look at what the future looks like for Auburn. And once the season officially concludes, then I'll dive more into the roster and what kind of changes may be headed for this team and for this program. But I just wanted to dive a little bit more into my tweet. I had a lot of interactions with it, so I think a lot of Auburn fans pretty much agree with the gist of it. Even some folks, push back on some of the details, but I wanted to explain it a little bit further. As for some other positive Auburn news around before we wrap up and close out the show today, Auburn baseball swept Winthrop this weekend. SEC play on the horizon this upcoming weekend. Cannot wait to watch that. Softball. Auburn softball got a series win over Kentucky this weekend at home. Congratulations to them. Auburn equestrian with a massive win over Texas A&M. They'll host the SEC tournament, I guess it's called, for equestrian, forgive me, coming up here soon. And then spring football, right around the corner. Alex Golish's first season on the Plains, his first spring practice. That starts next week. So spring break for Auburn students this upcoming week. So I might do a separate episode, a separate previewing Auburn spring practice and not include that in the entire podcast next weekend. I may do a separate show for basketball and then a show for football. But don't worry, we will have plenty on Auburn football previewing spring practice and what to watch for. So be looking for that in the coming week or so on the feed, on social media, on the YouTube channel. So be staying on the lookout for that. But again, thank you so much for watching or listening to the show. I greatly appreciate it. Even if you are an Alabama fan watching or listening to the show, I appreciate the listeners or watchers any shape, form, or fashion. So I appreciate it, and we'll be back with another edition of Talkin' Tumors next week. Thank you for listening to Talkin' Tumors. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow @Talkin' Tumors on social media so you'll never miss an episode. War Eagle.